Okay, we like to start on time. There was just a couple more people going to sit down, but I'm sure they'll be able to hear us here. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to say thanks for coming tonight, and I hope your fall is quite pleasant. If you're not a registered voter, you'll need to be up on the bleachers on the side. If you need a chair on the floor, just pull one over there if getting up is difficult. This is the process we follow when we're in order, so there's no confusion. I just want to take a note of reflection that our town has sadly lost a few very dedicated people in the past couple of weeks. Corey Bardwell, Flash Williams, and all too soon, Greg Winters, our newest town treasurer. These people were so typical of born and bred townies that made a difference. They'll be missed, and our best and sincere wishes go out to their families, but also to these people here in town posts. They also lost these close friends as well. So it's a sad day for a lot of people, but they would want us to go onward and forward, which we will. Now, at times we need to hold a special town meeting to get some business decided that needs attention, even before annual. So let's see if we can get this done early and get you all back to your daily routines. And again, thank you for coming. Now, there are two articles that have caused a little bit of confusion, and I just want to explain. Article 1, in its simplest comment, is a vote to consider the dismantling of the old regional library building due to its failing condition and retain the property. That's in its simplest form. Article 2 is whether to sell the building and/or the property. Surely it will be explained by a variety of everyone here, but that's the clarity between those two. And I guess that would be all. You want to start your motions?
Moment of silence.
We can have a moment of silence for sure. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Leschko.
I move we take up Article 1.
Second.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded to take up Article 1 as in your handout.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Leschko.
I move that the town vote to appropriate sum not to exceed $300,000 and to meet said appropriation, authorize the treasurer to borrow such sum under consistent with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7 or 8, and or any other source of authority to dismantle the center school building or take any action relative thereto.
You've heard the motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Sir. And maybe you're a little new in town, I ask people to come to the mic and at least just say, not your street number, but the street you live on, and they kind of have an idea where you're coming from.
I'm David Major. I live next to this property. And since Article 2 is related to Article 1, wouldn't it make sense to have a discussion about all of it before we vote on part of it?
Well, this has been going on for almost 14 years, and there's been a lot of give and take all around, and I think they finally arrived at a way of trying to present it in its form. You guys want to talk on that? Do you want to?
I'll take it.
Okay.
Over the past several years, town meeting's been presented with various options regarding the former center school property. At one time, it was authorized to sell, came to town meeting to authorize the sale, and it was disapproved. Came back proposing use for town purposes, municipal purposes. That was defeated. Came back again to rent or lease the facility. That was approved. Go ahead and do that. We went out. We only had one responsive bidder who, after exploring it a little further, determined it was beyond their ability to fund. So tonight, we're presenting two options, essentially, to try and drive this to resolution. One, an option that we've not put on the table before, take it down, dismantle it. Or two, come back again for another try with respect to selling it, getting authorization for the board to sell the property. Now, in that regard, with respect to the latter point, we did receive a grant from the state to look at potential uses of the center school grounds and the building. Some of the study group members are here tonight. The focus was on twofold. One, the market analysis, what might be out there in terms of potentials for use, and then what would be the costs associated with those potential uses. And the study group concluded that the only feasible alternative, economically feasible alternative, was housing. There was no interest in the market for other potential uses. And as part of that, given the notion of retaining the facility, that facility itself would cost about $4.1 million simply to bring up to code. So to make a project of housing viable, they concluded you'd need to be able to house have about 40 rental units as a minimum. So while that is one approach, we don't want to infer that in Article 2 that's the only thing on the table. That's what appears to be most feasible, and we certainly wanted to put that before the town meeting so they'd understand what potentially could come out of a sale, given the best efforts of the marketing folks to look at what are the potential best uses. So here we are tonight, again, trying to put on the table options to move forward on this. The facility has been assessed. It's kind of at a tipping point in terms of condition, trying to drive this to resolution.
Sure,
with
and
an answer.
we're all anxious to do that. We see that property there. So the second paragraph of the proposal is, because of the high cost of renovation, the consultants have determined that it's probably not likely that a developer would expend the kind of money on the building itself to create a handful of housing units. So we are among 4 bidders when there was a town request for proposal that made a proposal, and our proposal was for 4 townhouses made out of that. And there are others. So if that's viable, then we certainly don't want to knock down the building and then not have anything to work with. And a lot of people here might be more interested in a 4-unit townhouse development than a 40-unit low-income housing development.
Well, again, I thought I said that to clarify the point here. Yes, we had a study group. Yes, they had a recommendation based on what their best work in terms of what might be marketable, feasible. But all that will be driven, really, in terms of responses we get from bidders by a request for an RFP, a request for proposals. So we could wait, for example, in that RFP, hire, wait to someone who would use perhaps less of the field behind it,
And our
or simply be
proposal
restricted
kept
to
the field with the town so that they could have all the games that are currently being played there, which are a huge number of games. I don't know if you ever get back there, but it's it's the place where the field hockey happens.
Yes.
Our winning team. That's where they win. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that none of these consultants came to the previous folks who proposed and developers who proposed the 4-unit townhouse there.
I can't answer that.
But they're saying that probably it is not likely a developer would expend that kind of money. But there was actually an answer to that, actually 4 answers. There were 4 proposals where developers were just going to use the footprint of the Center Street School to make 4 housing units. Okay, anyway.
So your position is that's a viable...
Well, my position is then that, let's not vote to destroy the building first and then discover that we actually want to do something with it.
Sure. Sean, go right ahead.
The articles are not mutually exclusive of each other in any way. The Article 1 authorizes the town to expend and borrow $300,000 to dismantle the building. It doesn't direct that it be done in any particular time frame.
Okay.
Article 1 and Article 2 could potentially both pass, and then the Board of Selectmen, I guess, would have to decide whether they wanted, which one they wanted to try to act on first. So there's a potential that they could, if both articles passed, try to sell it, and if not, then they would have the money to dismantle it. I'm not saying they would do that, I'm just saying the two articles are independent and not mutually exclusive of each other.
Okay, so does Article 2 give you a plebiscite to build 40 units on there, or just that people would like something to happen?
No, it does not require 40 units, no. As I said, the RFP will shape,
Okay,
which is to be developed based on outcome this evening,
Great.
or not.
okay,
So-
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Right here.
Joan Cox, 44 Main Street. The reason I have trouble figuring out what to do here is that as much as I really would like to see that building preserved, if it can't be preserved, it can't be preserved. I really think it's a mistake to build on open public land right in the middle of town. There's a lot of building going on in private property in town, and I think for a town to give up the public parkland is an error. I would rather see us build up on that footprint than do some of the stuff that could happen if we vote for this. So I wish that there was some kind of proposal that would, at least that we could vote on, in which we could exempt building on most of that property in the back. So I don't know how to vote because I'm worried that if I vote for the possibility of a sale, which I'm not, I mean, I would like to not see this sold to a private interest, but if the land could be protected, I'd be much more willing to do, that if that's necessary in order to preserve the public parkland that we have back there, especially because if the town votes to build the library, a new library with a parking lot next to the old library, that some open parkland is going to be taken there. So, I wonder why we weren't given an opportunity to vote on preserving that space. In other words, to vote for whatever has to happen in the footprint of the old building and the old parking lot, but to preserve the fields for public use. Thank you. So can anyone, is that, is there a way of,
I'll try. We were going forward with the proposal as stated here, based on the analysis from the study group that looked at potential options. And again, the finding was that to be economically viable, a developer would need to move beyond the footprint of just the existing building. And that was as a consequence, it was framed in that manner.
my last question, did these consultants think about building up a floor? In other words, having a three-story building rather than taking up building on open space. Did they consider that, or
Can I ask something?
too high?
Would John Wilkes was on the study group. Perhaps he can answer that better than I.
Yes, John Wilkes, North Hatfield, West Street. We spent about a year on this project, trying to go forward. We're leaving the option open. If the town feels it's viable, that they want to protect some of the land back there, okay. In the proposal itself, the scheme that we had thought was the best proposal from the consultants was to leave probably half the property open. If anybody took the time to read the study, they'll see the schemes where you keep probably half the parcel open. There's about almost 7 acres in back there. Our proposal, we thought was the most economically feasible, was to add some housing to it for a developer. But again, as the gentleman said, maybe the town wanted to go with just the footprint. That's up to the town, but we felt as a committee, and we voted unanimously, that probably the best option for the town is to sell the property and put it back on the tax rolls.
So, and again, that's why I said in the first part of this, and I had gotten their okay to at least express this, that the first article is a vote to give them permission to consider dismantling the building. It's not that just because you voted they're going to do it. It's to give them the permission to consider that. The second article is to give them permission to consider selling the building and or the property. And from my talks with them is they're going to have a group or a committee put together to consider that. So that's the difference between the two. We're essentially giving them permission or not giving them permission to do either article. Linda?
Linda Hurley, 5 Pantry Road, West Hatfield, and I was a member of the committee, not only this one, but the committee before this. It was my understanding when we met with the selectmen and with Paul that Article number 1 was going to ask you people to put the property up for sale, ask the townspeople. And Article 2 was going to be to fund the demolition of the building, basically. I would like to see Article 1 tabled so it would give us a chance to see what's out there for RFPs. Everybody's talking housing, and yes, that was what the committee came up with, but who knows? There might be a developer out there that there might be something else that could go in there. I think we deserve, or the townspeople deserve, to see what's out there. And everybody's talking 40 units of housing. That is the maximum. The minimum could be 6, the minimum could be 8, the minimum could be 10. You don't know until you go out for an RFP. So I would like to see, not yet, I just want to tell you my feeling, and then I'll make a motion, that Article number 1 be tabled. We have annual town meeting coming up in May. If nothing comes of getting RFPs out there and getting any type of result that the town is happy with or the selectmen are happy with, then at annual town meeting, we could ask for the $300 to take the building down.
And before you, because it's so early in the evening, can we at least have a little bit of discussion before
Absolutely.
a motion's made?
And then
because I think a
I will
lot of
make-
people need to learn more.
Absolutely, and then I will make my motion.
Jonathan Bardwell, North Hatfield Road. I've lived in town my whole life. The town spends a lot of money on watershed property, open space. We try to save space in our own town. Farmers put their property into 61A, save farmland from development. Here we're spending $300,000 to take down a building. What's an acre of land, or 7 acres of land on Main Street in Hatfield worth for a house? So the town pays $300,000. You got to think about this. This is our center of town. We have a school there. I think it should come down. It's been there for too long. Come down. We have a park area or a place for a pavilion for maybe 10 years from now, 50 years, maybe 100 years from now, when our town has 6,000 people in it. We get rid of it now, we have no center of town. Thank you.
Sandy Belden, Depot Road. I just have a clarifying question on Article 1. It reads to me as though if this passes, the town will dismantle the center school building. Your earlier conversation suggested it would be at the discretion of the select board. And so I'd just like to clarify whether or not, if in fact this is passed, that the building will come down.
And I think the best thing is to get an opinion from them.
And my opinion is the building would come down as quick as possible. As quick as possible, if this is approved tonight.
I would suggest that unless Article 2 passes. In other words, as the moderator has explained and Jeff has explained, if Article 1 should pass for the dismantling of the building, and Article 2 should not pass to allow the selectmen to sell the building or a portion of the property, then the building would be dismantled.
Well, that's not what the article says. The article
they're
says if
two
it passes,
separate-
it'll be dismantled.
I don't read it that way. It authorizes the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
No, it doesn't say that. It just says that to borrow under and consistent with and any other source of authority to dismantle the center school building. It doesn't say to consider dismantling the center school building or to think about that in the context of other possibilities. It says it will be dismantled. So I think we ought to be clear about what we're voting on before we vote on Article 1, whether we table it or not.
The way we had talked about it a number of times is to dismantle the building. Article 1 is to dismantle the building, take it down, sell the slate, the steel that's in the attic, anything that's in that building, we put out there for bid, sell it, and then remove the building from the premises and leave it as an open field.
Sir.
Dave Reed, Bridge Street, Hatfield. I know nobody wants to look back, but I want to look back just for a couple of minutes to make sure that we're all on the same page. I can remember a couple of years ago when Darrell was the chair of the select board. He opened his meeting that night by saying, "My goal is to sell the Center School building tonight." He had permission from the town to do it. All he needed, he made a motion. The other two select board members, one of which is still on the board, which I respect very much, in my opinion, he made the wrong decision that night. He voted nay, and Darrell didn't have the votes. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here tonight. That building would have been completely restored, historical value. There would have been condos in it, landscaped, the whole shamil. And I just wish that that would have passed that night, and none of us would be here today. I'm reminded of Dave Mazzani in Northampton. Dave, in the best of intentions, got a grant for low-income housing, not realizing what the Fair Housing Act was all about. His goal was to put people in from Northampton on low income into that housing area. Obviously, it never happened because of the rules and regulations allowing anybody from anywhere to come in town and occupy those buildings. So I would think a long time before I decided to put low-income housing in there because of the Fair Housing Act. It wouldn't be just people of Hatfield, don't forget. It would be anybody that qualifies. A bad move. You know, I was at a meeting several months ago when the town moderator made an excellent presentation, in my opinion. He can't speak on the issue, but I can speak perhaps on his behalf, perhaps not. His goal was to dismantle the building, recycle the building. We got a perfect spot there for a town park. It couldn't get better. Connecticut River in your backyard. How could you ask for more? A beautiful park could be there. The cornerstone of the building could be there. I mean, it's a perfect scenario. For under $300,000, it is a no-brainer. And I would just like to say that it's been, how many people remember when everybody was chomping at the bit to get the library out of there, the regional library? You got to get out, you got to get out, you got to get out, we got to move forward. The sign's still there. Nothing has happened since. Everything has a lifespan. We have a lifespan, and that building's lifespan is over at this time. Thank you.
Kathy?
Kathy Gow, Depot Road. So I'm interested in the preservation of historic buildings as much as the next person, perhaps slightly more so. But I believe that the Center School, along with several of our other speakers, I believe that it's perhaps time for that building to go. when the building no longer meets the needs of the town and its condition or its configuration don't provide what any group in town needs, and the town can't afford to renovate it ourselves. I also believe that unless there is a developer, unless it is viable for someone to come in and put in a smaller set of units on the existing footprint and willing to spend the large amounts of money to do that, if there is someone willing to spend that extra money to do that, then that might be worth it. But otherwise, it seems like this building has done a great job for Hatfield for many years when it was the center school, but it's not meeting those needs now, and it's time to move on. And I think it would be good to have a pre-demolition, if that's going to happen, open house community event at the center school. It could be something co-hosted by the Historical Commission and the Historical Society. Everyone could come tour the building, the parts of it that are safe to go through. We could, scan people's photos and record people's stories and, give credit to the building before it moves on. We still would be preserving the site. So if it's financially feasible for the town to keep the space as an open space or a park or something, what's not to like about that? But we do have financial needs. We're having the library renovation project coming up. I know a lot of people think that won't go because we don't have the money, but if we were to sell this, the footprint of the school to someone, would that money perhaps be able to be used for the library? I don't know. But it does seem like to have a developer or someone bid for the building, but have their hands tied by having to, keep the existing facade there, it doesn't seem like it makes it a financially feasible project. And to be able to keep it in the same footprint where we are. Thank you.
Deborah Major, Main Street, Hatfield. I've been in town for only 23 years, so I'm basically a newcomer. But I can imagine a time when there was transportation happening across the river between Hadley and Hatfield, and that the river was a mode of movement, transportation, for many different reasons. It seems like maintaining that area so that people enjoy the river, have access to the river, creating public space there, really maintains a powerful, integrated center to the town that the town deserves. Feels like public housing would be an injustice to everybody that lives in town. Is it possible to make a motion to vote on using that as public space tonight, as we're voting on other issues? That's my question.
Got an opinion? I mean, if somebody wants to amend the article.
I would imagine that when Article 2 comes up for discussion, that would be where somebody from the floor could make any sort of suggestions or recommendations that they were interested in.
Keep it clean.
Yes, I think Article 2 is what they're saying is Article 2 opens the door for that.
Can
Anyone
I go
else?
back and say one thing,
Sure.
Mr. Moderator? I'm sorry. So when Mr. Belden was up here, my intention is if Article 1 should pass to dismantle the building, and Article 2 should pass to go maybe one more shot to try to sell and preserve the building, should that happen, my intention is certainly not to run out and have that building dismantled before the option of Article 2 that the townspeople, should you decide to vote for it, has a chance to play out. So it might not indicate that because they are two separate articles that aren't really, for the point of our discussion, they're related. For the point of articles and voting, they are not related. So that's why they're two separate articles on the warrant.
And Louise had a question? Louise? I'm only alluding because this woman's been helping this town out for a very, very, very long time. So I guess membership has a privilege.
Haven't been able to do this for a long time. Louise Slish, 99 Elm Street. So, one, can you quickly clarify, this is a two-thirds vote to
Correct.
authorize the borrowing?
They both are two-thirds.
And the motion is essentially the same thing that we're seeing here. You're authorizing $300,000 to remove the building. So with those issues and the concerns people have talked about, then, and I don't have a piece of paper, Lydia, I'm sorry, but I would like to make a motion to amend this, that this is contingent upon the, I don't want to say the disability, but the inability to sell the building if it is, the proposed sale is approved under Article 2, then you would not be able to dismantle the building. I think that's the concern of people, is that you want to offer this building for sale, and you want permission to dismantle it. They don't want to vote on these as two separate issues. So we need to fix my amendment so that it will say you can dismantle this building if the Board of Selectmen are unable to dispose of the real estate, and kind of combine the two articles into one and then just table the second one.
Good, talking to Mike.
Say,
So, what if one passed right now and two failed outright right now?
but in one, we would do an amendment that says you can dismantle it only if the Board of Selectmen is unsuccessful in selling.
I'm only suggesting, what if I don't have a read of the room, but
Right.
what if the will of the room is, we don't want to sell it, we want to take it down right now?
Then you could vote down the amendment. Right? It gives that option if people want to do that. So we'll write it up very quickly so it makes sense.
This is the beauty of town meeting and being able to discuss things. It's a healthy thing, and it helps everybody understand lots of sides to this.
So if this amendment,
Jeff.
And she's a former town clerk, Louise, he had his town council suggestion. Ed, excuse me.
What's a reasonable date by which you would want to be able to sell the property?
18 months, 2 years.
By sell, you might want to say under contract, 12 months, so we don't get any questions about when that happens. I don't want to keep at it.
When it doesn't sell within a year, forget it.
Yeah, Luke. She's right.
I'm going to bring it right back to you.
She has to show you one thing.
Okay, so now this article is going to say that the selectmen are allowed to destroy, to demolish the property, dismantle the property, as stated, and add on to that article, provided that the Board of Selectmen is unable to dispose of the property or a portion thereof via sale or under contract by December 31st of 2015. You need a second.
I need a second for that if there's a,
16? Okay, I'll change it to 16.
so read it prop.
No, okay, it's staying at 15.
Okay.
Somebody else can amend it.
Is there a second to that?
Is there a second?
There's no second. Okay, well, now there's a second. Okay. So this is provided that the Board of Selectmen is unable to dispose of the property or a portion of it via sale or under contract by December 31st, 2015. And there's a second. Is there any discussion on this? Go ahead first, and then I'll take you next.
I'm still David Major, and I'm a little confused why we can't vote on the First Amendment, that if we vote to dismantle the building and make a park, all in one vote.
Right, but at the moment, she's got an amendment up here, and it was seconded, so...
But we were talking about this before that, and I'm sorry,
Okay.
I forget your name, but you said, well, we couldn't do it on the first, but we could do it on the second. Why can't we do it on the first? I mean, we're already amending it, so can we amend it to say, vote to dismantle the building and make a public park?
Well, at this point, we have to vote on the amendment here that was made and seconded, then we go back to the motion.
But we talked about this first before this revision of the amendment. And we're advised that we couldn't do
But
that.
when somebody makes a motion and it's seconded, that takes precedent, and if that fails, we go back to the first one.
But we didn't have the opportunity to make a motion because we were advised that we couldn't vote on the first, but only on the second. So,
That's true, that's true. So what do we do? Do we withdraw this one, Mr. Attorney?
so I'd like to make a motion that we spend $300,000 to dismantle the building and make
Let me just
a public park.
Let me just get the attorney's opinion, so
Okay.
that we don't find out tomorrow morning that this is all null and void.
With,
'cause we
with
did
beautiful access to the Connecticut River and our girls playing field hockey there.
So,
As I understand, right now, there's a motion on the floor to act upon. Right.
right.
Your question is,
We attempted to make the motion
Well, you-
prior to that, but were advised that
you
we
want
could not do
you want
that.
another motion to be acted on.
Sure, I would like this to precede that other motion.
Well, the one way to accomplish it would be to withdraw the motion. If whoever made the motion wants to do that. The other option is you got to vote on the motion, right? I mean,
Right.
I don't see any.
So Louise, the question is, do you want to withdraw the motion for now or not? Speak into the mic.
Yeah, so I was wondering why we don't have so we were talking about this before, make a motion to dismantle the Center Street School and for the purpose of building a public space and a park in that whole area. So that's one complete motion. So I tried to make it prior to you getting up and was advised that we couldn't make it on the first, but only on the second, so. And then we amended the first.
As town clerk, I don't want anybody standing here talking, but I'm going to talk for just 1 second. If people are not in favor of the motion I made, it should get voted down, and then you would make a new motion, and then we could vote on that motion.
Okay. All right?
Okay.
I'm cool with that.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So now we're back to, yes. Jane.
Jane Yolen, Stemple, School Street. I've been listening to everybody, and Louise, I love you. But I think we aren't understanding the main problem here. If we vote to money to dismantle without knowing what's going to be, without having parameters as to what's going to be there, then we get what we get. And I think that we need to say first what it is we want there as a town. Do we want to give it away to people outside of the town? Do we want a place in the town that is a park or a pavilion or a memorial or whatever? We need to say that first before we start giving it away and then going, oh God, I didn't mean that. So I don't know how to get there, but that's how I feel.
I think I can answer that. If you vote in favor, all right, so the amendment, if the amendment were voted down, and number one, we're back to Article 1, and you passed Article 1, the building would be taken down if Article 2 then failed. So if Article 2 fails, there's no way to sell it. There's actually, to your point, in a way, there's no need to have an amendment to create a public park, because if you take down the building and you choose not to sell the land, then by default, it is a public open space that's sitting there. What?
You have to vote down 2.
Vote down 2. 2 is the article authorizing the sale of the land. If you vote down 2, then you can't sell the land. It's by definition an open public space. In order to make it be something other than a public space without a building on it, you would have to do something affirmative. That's why Article 2 is here, because in order to allow the selectmen to sell it, there has to be an affirmative action on the part of town meeting.
But I guess what I'm saying is, I get the feeling that if I vote for number 1, and I've given them $300,000 to take it down, and I haven't made any rules about what I want, we're going to get what we get.
You're not going to get anything unless Article 2 passes.
But we have to wait and see if Article 2 passes. Yeah, that's, yeah.
I think we're all feeling the effects of the conundrum they've been in as the last couple of select boards as well. Sure.
Can I just one point
Been
on Jane?
listening to all of you.
Wait, can you wait 1 second? Because he was just going to
Yes.
answer Jane's.
Just one comment on Jane's statement. You'll get what you authorized to get, because anything we would do with that property would cost money and would be reflected in a budget and come before a town meeting. So it's not as though anything happenstance could occur with respect to that property. If something was going to be done other than the dismantling of the building, it would come here, back to town meeting for vote for the funding to do that. So you'd have a direct say.
And do you have one answer for Jane's?
I would just like to comment that if this land is sold, it is gone forever. The town of Hatfield, that land is so valuable to the town center, it should be saved for future generations to come. It has no value to us, especially if it goes into housing. It would be costly, but more open space and let somebody else decide, let the future generation decide what to do with that parcel. Keep it open space, keep it open land, leave the ball fields and field hockey, and that, to me, would be the right way to go.
Okay, so why don't, go right ahead.
Mr.
The
Moderator.
floor is yours.
I have been silent, and I hesitate to speak because I know you have legal counsel here. But I want to, in my opinion, it's only my opinion, but it comes with having been an attorney that advised many towns, and I think most people know my background as a lawyer and a judge. The article as it presently reads, in my opinion, Sandy Belden was correct. If you
Well, wait,
vote this...
First, we're on the one Louise proposed. We're not back to the article.
I know, but I mean, the article, the motion that was originally before the floor, on the floor, that was proposed by the selectmen and seconded before the amendment, if that passed, that would authorize the dismantling of the building. And no question about it, in my opinion. And it would not give you the discretion. What then, if you voted Article 2 to sell, that would be contradictory to number 1, and what you would have would be 2 inconsistent votes and put you in a legal tangle, quite frankly, depending upon who wants to come forward. But the motion as proposed originally by the selectmen before the amendment would, in my opinion, authorize the selectmen to dismantle the building and not give you any deference whatsoever. And if you dismantle the building, then that remains public property and is owned by the town of Hatfield. And then it would be up to the citizens to determine what they wanted to do with that space. That could come at a later date, but it does give the selectmen some discretion. Once you raise that building, then it's still public property. And of course, the obvious is presently used in part as an athletic field, and it's also used in part as a public park in the sense there's access to the Connecticut River Valley. And as many of the speakers have said, that's a valuable asset to this town. There's no question about it. It's the center of your town. But this committee worked very hard to come up with an economically feasible problem if you didn't raise that building. And we thought the answer was to market it as housing. But it's up to all of you to determine whether or not you want to keep the land or you want to dispose of the building in a marketable fashion. And that's really the vote that's before the town tonight, whether you want to preserve the land as municipal property for whatever use you wish to put it, or you want to sell it and put it on the tax rolls of the town. And I just wanted to clarify, I'm probably speaking out of turn here, but I felt Sandy Belden was correct when he raised the point that if you pass this as originally proposed, you're giving the selectmen the authority to dismantle the building, in my opinion.
Thank you. So we're back. We're still back on the amendment to Article 1, which would add the wording, providing that the Board of Selectmen is unable to dispose of the property or a portion via sale or under contract by December 31st, 2015. That's what we're going to be voting on first, and depending on that, we go back to Article 1 if that fails. So if we can is there any more discussion on that? Sure. Okay.
Just on the amendment. On the amendment,
Your name?
Brad Eichwald, I live on Main Street. Yeah, I'm Eichwald, yes. The amendment as it is, I just want to make absolutely sure that when it uses the word property, it's only referring to the building and its footprint. It does not include any of the field.
She put property or a portion.
Property or portion, so that includes the field?
This says to provide, this would be in favor of dismantling, voting the money to allow the consideration for dismantling the building, providing that the Board of Selectmen is unable to dispose of the property or a portion via a sale or under contract by December 31st, 2015.
Okay, so it could be the entire field, it could be part of the field, or it could be just the area where the building is. Okay, I think that's really important. Thank you.
Okay. And this is on the motion.
Yes. So if we vote this motion, it means that you could sell the whole property and someone could develop it. So it's not a good motion for those of us who care about preserving open space, right?
No, I think this motion is to approve the money to dismantle the building.
If with the town,
If Article 2 passed also.
if Article, I see.
No?
No.
Okay. I'm glad I'm not in your position. Do you want to clarify this?
The way I'm hearing it is Article 1, if the amendment passes, then the Board of Selectmen would have to hold on tearing down the building and wait a year and try to sell it within that year.
But then it could also.
That's the way I understand the amendment.
So then the amendment would mean that it could sell the entire property, not just the building and the footprint, but the entire property. So.
Or, well, the way the amendment says it would be the entire property, I believe.
No. It says the property or a portion
Or a
thereof.
portion.
Okay, it says
But it could-
a portion or a portion
But it
of.
gives a permission that you could end up selling the entire property. So I would advise against passing this amendment because then it would enable the town to sell the whole thing. But now, I want to say one thing while I'm up here, and then I'll shut up and sit down. As I said before, I'm for keeping this space as open space, the open space that's there now, but I'm open to a number of uses for the footprint. The footprint that's now has a building and a parking lot. I'm just against extending that. And I just want to say that I am not opposed to people who are outside coming into the town. I mean, America is based on people from the outside coming in. We're all children of immigrants. And so I don't want to have my position, at least my own position, against building on open space to be seen as being antagonism to people outside Hatfield coming in. I myself didn't grow up in Hatfield. I'm thrilled to be in town, and I want us to have a welcoming attitude towards other people who may be low income for no other reason than that it's really hard to get a job these days. So I just wanted to make that clear. But I would advise the town to vote down this amendment because it would allow our officials to sell the whole property.
Thank you. Pat? Now we're still on the amendment. I'm trying to keep it there, but I'm trying to be very polite to everybody.
There is, and I believe this pertains to the amendment, there is a previous existing decision by townsfolk here at a prior town meeting, regular town meeting, that clearly indicated that if the building was to be sold, it was to be sold to in terms of the end of the macadam in the back. The fields were to remain. My understanding now is that we extend to the board the option of selling the entire property. And I don't believe that that is the best course of action for us to take. As was rightly pointed out by several of the speakers, land is hard to come by, and this is right in the middle of town. It just doesn't make any sense. Take the building down or sell the building, but if you're going to sell it to the end of the macadam and allow the fields behind it to be retained. That is what the pre-existing article meant and was approved by town floor. But once again, we forget what was decided
Well, that's
before.
why we're all here to remind you.
You're absolutely right, Joe. Absolutely right. I just want to clarify that it's not something new.
Right.
There was a pre-existing decision to sell only to the macadam, not the full area to the dike. And by the way, we own the dike, obviously, okay, and then to the river.
Thank you.
I'm Nicole Perrin from Main Street, and I don't know if many people know this, but there's a 2-hour video on YouTube that covers the town meetings with the feasibility study boards and the architect consultant people. Can I say raise of hands of people who saw this video, watched it in entirety? Okay. I'd like to share a little bit of information, and this is just coming from my impression of seeing this video. I would like to share something about this idea of possibly saving the building and building residences just on that imprint. My understanding, and I listened to it thoroughly, was that to put in a modest amount of condos, maybe 6 to 8, 10 or so, in that building was going to cost at least $12 million. So that means each condo would have to go for over $1 million. And I don't think that that's going to happen. So I got the impression that having a housing unit there just on that imprint is really a fantasy. So to me, in my mind, it's just, are we going to sell for full development and lose that land, because any developer who comes in is going to want to put a minimum of 40 to 60 units on there to make a profit. And that means we lose our fields. We lose the center of Hatfield. And so to me, the only choice is, do we save the land? Do we keep it? And open it up, take down the building. Unfortunately, I love old buildings too, but I don't see how it's feasible for us to keep that building if we're going to save the land and keep that center. So I'd like to see a park. Thank you.
Okay, so can we move the question, or is there, Cindy, why don't you come up one more time? I'll have Cindy come up, and then I'll try to move this without being tarred and feathered or any of that.
Cindy Doty, Main Street, Hatfield. I'm hoping you can clarify this for me, Mr. Moderator. When I read this over a week ago, I read Article 1, and it seemed that was for the faction of people who would be interested in going that route, that wanted the building to come down and maybe do something with open space or whatever. Or by Article 2 would give the selectmen the opportunity to try to sell it again. I feel we've been doing this rodeo for years and years, and now if the way I'm seeing it, and if you can tell me if this is correct, is if we vote yes on this amendment, then if we vote on Article 1, that gives the selectmen the ability to try to sell it, and Article 2 gives the selectmen the ability to try to sell it. So any voter loses their option to say, no, we don't want it sold, which is what we voted for last time. So if we vote this amendment in, I think that doesn't give most people a choice at all. You're voting to try to sell it with both articles.
That's on the amendment that's made.
If the amendment is put into Article 1, then both articles are allowing the selectmen to try to sell this. If we vote down the amendment, am I correct?
If we vote down the amendment, then we're back to the
selectmen don't
article.
get to try to sell it under both articles. People have a choice.
Right. If
it both says they can sell it, then
If
we
the
have no
amendment's
choice.
voted down, then we're back to the article. If the
Right.
amendment's voted through, then the article is voted
Then
through.
either way, either one that's voted in, it goes against the wishes of the last town meeting. The selectmen get to try to sell it again.
Well, and it's
Just
like
many
they had
years
said,
later.
you can vote yes, no, no, yes. I mean, between the two articles,
So-
that's where the
So my feeling is
complication
if we vote to amend this article, then both of them, either one that you vote for, the selectmen are going to try to sell it. It takes away anyone's vote that wants to say, no, I don't
think-
want this sold.
I think part of the beauty, though, of a town meeting like this is we're being like a very large loudspeaker to our select board. I mean, I think they're hearing a lot of opinions from people that don't come to the smaller meetings. And I think they need to hear this.
Thank you.
Okay, so, yes, sir. So what town council is pointing out is, on this amendment that Louise put forward, it is not a mandate that anybody can dismantle the building until after December of 2015. So by voting for the amendment, you're not voting to sell the property. You're voting that the building can't be dismantled until December of 2015. And he just wanted to clarify that. Sure, speak. Take the mic right there.
You can see I have a lot of experience with this. First off, my name is Steve Fletcher. I'm with Bracken and Lucas. We're town council. And what I was just trying to point out, what sounds like some understandable confusion here, the motion is a contingency. It, in effect, says the town can't tear down the school building until, at the earliest, December 31st, 2015. You know, that's the provided if. That motion does not give the selectmen the authority to enter into that contract to sell the property or any part of it, you would still have to pass Article 2. Now, if you're wondering, well, what if we vote in the motion and we pass it and we don't pass Article 2, well, that motion in effect is a nullity because, you know, they don't have any authority to sell. You've in effect put a roadblock on the selectmen from tearing the building down until December 31st, 2015. And if that happens on Article 2, you might want to revisit Article 1, reconsider it. But you won't know what you want to do until you vote on Article 2. But I just wanted to clarify. Hopefully I'm clarifying. If you enact Article 1 and you've passed the amendment, what that means is they can't do anything to tear down the building until after December 31st, 2015, because you've said that they've got until that time to put it under contract or sell it. Hopefully that's clear. I'm seeing a lot of glazed expressions and
Okay. So we're on the amendment from Louise. Paul, thank you. Paul wasn't sure if we should have an attorney here tonight to clarify things, but thank you, Paul. Okay. All those in favor of Louise's article signify by saying aye. Okay. So this is to see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum not to exceed $300,000 and meet said appropriation to authorize the treasurer to borrow under Mass General laws and any other source of authority to dismantle the center school building, provided that the Board of Selectmen is unable to dispose of the property or a portion via sale or under contract by December 31st, 2015.
The only thing you're voting on is the addition of this amendment.
Okay, so
to
you're
the article. You're
so
not voting the
you're not
article.
voting Article 1, you're voting on only the amendment she provided, is to put a limit till December 31st, 2015 to dismantle the building. Then we go back to Article 1. So this is on the amendment. Is that clear? That's simple majority? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion fails. Okay, so now we're back to Article 1. Larry.
Now that we wasted all that time, Larry Grossman, King Street.
No, there's no time wasted
That's
because we're
right.
learning, we're all learning.
Thank you. I would like to see a path that we could now discuss that ties in with all the speakers, and even at least one of the selectmen has spoken on this subject. Certainly Dave has spoken. I'm not prepared to write it. Perhaps someone else can. I would like to see Article 1 amended to take the building down and dedicate it to public space and end this discussion. And I don't know if Dave will craft something or someone, the judge, but here we have even our own committee, we had a member of the committee, the reuse committee or whatever you called it, the center school committee, say that certainly the residential development seems like a poor decision and a poor outcome. So I think we need to finally bring some closure to this, that I think all the selectmen here, some at the other table, and a couple in the audience have been through this. So maybe we could amend Article 1 now to...
Are you suggesting an amendment or, excuse me? Sure. Could you speak in the mic, though?
Could we make a motion to take up Article 2 first? I think if we took up Article 2 first, and Article 2 is either passed or defeated, that would end the question about selling the land. Then all we would be left with was a choice of, do we want to dismantle the building or leave it sitting there?
I'm not against that. I think that's a good idea, but I do like the idea of further narrowing the demolition, that we cannot take the building down and then a year from now try again to sell it to a developer or something.
The problem is that I don't know if you can do that, actually. You'd have to ask the attorney. I don't know if you can bind the future town meeting forever from ever doing anything.
You can't. Carrie, in just a minute. Okay, come on up, Gary.
Isn't a good idea. Yeah. 200 years from now.
Okay, I'll get to you.
It's like we voted to sell the building, then we voted to.
Carrie Flaherty, Primrose Path. If I'm understanding this correctly, if we leave everything the way it is, now we voted down the amendment, if the people here want to just take down the building and they want the property to stay with the town, you vote yes for Article 1, correct? And if you don't want the property to be sold with everybody that's sitting here, then on Article 2, you say no, and then you turn down Article 2. Then the property stays the same, the building comes down, it's a public space, and it stays the way it is, like everybody's discussing here. I'm not trying to be rude, but we've just spent an hour on this discussion, and from my understanding, everybody here wants it to stay as a public space, to be athletic fields, etc. So just vote yes for 1 and no for 2. Am I wrong, Sean? Am I wrong, Sean?
No, you're not wrong at all.
So then we don't have to make motions on moving articles different directions.
The only question is, if people feel uncertain about what's going to happen with Article 2, and that's affecting how they're thinking about Article 1.
Okay, I totally get you. I'm just saying it from my understanding of sitting in the back listening to everybody, nobody wants to sell it. So just vote yes for 1 and no for 2, and we can move on.
Right. And it's a 2/3 majority. Mark? Thank you, Carrie. You made it very clear, very simple.
Mark Gillard, Elm Street. I'd like to just propose, put an end to all the discussion about what the future use of this property might be in terms of open space. So I have an amendment that would protect the space in perpetuity. So I have that right here.
Okay. And I'll read this to see if there's a second. Or do you want to read it up there and see if there's a second? You got to sign it? So you read your amendment, and then we'll see if there's a second.
So I'll read the whole article with the amendment. To see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum not to exceed $300,000 and to meet said appropriation, authorize the treasurer to borrow under and consistent with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7 or 8, or any other source of authority to dismantle the center school building. That's just the existing.
I'll read it again in a second.
That's just the existing portion of 1. The amendment is, and to instruct the Board of Selectmen to take appropriate action such that at least 2/3 of the center school property, map 221, lot 179, on the eastern side fronting the Connecticut River, be protected in perpetuity as open space with public access from Main Street for recreational use by the citizens of the town, or take any other action relative thereto.
Is there a second? Okay, so I'm going to read this now. And his proposed amendment is to add the words, and to instruct the Board of Selectmen to take appropriate action such that at least 2/3 of the center school property, map 221, lot 179, on the eastern side fronting the Connecticut River, be protected in perpetuity as open space with public access from Main Street for recreational use by the citizens of the town, or take any action relative thereto. Is there any discussion on that? Let's start with John, and then I'll go to you next, and then Mike.
Could Mark clarify in perpetuity? How long? Is that forever?
Longer than you and I live.
That would restrict any other use of that property forever, right?
That's correct. Now, this is not
David Major, Main Street. I'm just
now,
wondering.
this is not protecting the building. It's protecting the land.
I understand that. So I'm just wondering, why don't we just lose the 2/3 part of it and protect the whole piece? I mean, then we're wondering what's happening with that 1/3. Are they going to make the school into whatever?
Right.
Well, so that's my thought. Just to
at the
take
moment we've got
out.
this.
Okay.
Mike. That was my question. Okay. Okay, so do you want to vote on this amendment? Be a night of amendments. All those in favor of this amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Ooh, that's close. Let's do it again. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. I would say the nays have it, but if anybody feels a head count would be safer, I have no problem. My feeling is the motion, there was more nays than ayes. Count? Very good. Let's do the count. All those in favor of this motion, please stand. And I have my two counters. Are any of you guys standing or not? And all those voting nay, please stand. Thank you. Wait. The yeas are 26, the nays are 66, so the motion fails. Okay, so now we're back to the article. Larry? Or you know, why don't we give David Carrot just a second, Larry? You had a, I'm just looking for different faces to bring something fresh.
David Kier, Bridge Street. I'd make a motion that we move the question, please.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay. We're going to move the question on Article 1. This has to be a 2/3 vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, to say the article again? To see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum not to exceed $300,000 and to meet said appropriation, authorize the treasurer to borrow under and consistent with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Sections 7 or 8, and any other source of authority to dismantle the center school building or take any other action relative thereto. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Now we're on to Article 2.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Boyle.
Move we take up Article 2.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to take up Article 2 as in your handout.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Boyle.
I move the town vote pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 15, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to sell all or a portion of the center school property, map 221, lot 170, 179, for a sum not less than $1, or take any other action relative thereto.
You've heard the motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, well, want to move the question? Jane, you have a question? Okay. All those in favor of Article 2 signify by saying aye. This is a 2/3. All those in favor, all those opposed to Article 2 signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion. This is, okay. All those in favor of Article 2 to give them permission to sell the property signify by saying aye. All those opposed to giving them permission to sell the property signify by saying nay. Nay. Beautiful. I love this. This is democracy in action. It's really, it's fine. But I do have to point out that in smaller meetings, no one up here no one really knew what to do, and everyone was wanting to hear from the townsfolk. This is our buildings, our money, it's our town. So thank you for that. Okay, you guys.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Williams. I mean, yeah, right, Larry's in the back. Let's
Good
go.
Mr. Moderator,
How about if I say Mr. Bryan?
no problem. I move we take up Article number 3.
Motion's been made and seconded to take up Article 3.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Bryan.
I move the town vote to have its elected town collector become an appointed town collector of the town or take any other action relative thereto.
You've heard the motion made and seconded in Article 3. Is there any discussion?
Jan Adamski from North Hatfield, 73 Depot Road, the good end of town. I have one question that has been bothering me. We just had a vote here. Everybody had their say. The people, we the people, okay? This article tells me we're going to change we the people. It tells me the 3 board members are going to appoint somebody and they're going to be in control of them, not we the people. I just want to make it perfectly clear. I feel, I don't care what 261 towns have done, personally. I feel that we're in the 90-something% of towns that want to stay the same. Otherwise, we may have been regionalized. We may not have this school right now because it was we, the people, that wanted our own. I just want to make it perfectly known that I think we should remain the way it is with us electing our own collector, clerk, treasurer, and so on. Not have the Board of Selectmen appoint and oversee. Thank you.
Any other discussion? In the back.
Stan Pitchko, Prospect Street. And there's a lot of tough questions that came up today, especially 1 and 2. And you never know if they're going to be good decisions or bad decisions. But question, or Article 3, small towns. It doesn't matter whether you vote in the presidential election or not. It doesn't matter if you vote for a state representative or not. But when it comes to making the rules and making decisions, this is probably the truest form of democracy that we have, is the small town. Those who come to the meeting get to make the rules, and I just don't understand why you would want to take that away from the people and appoint somebody. We may not always have a candidate. We may not elect the right candidate, but we did it. And I wish that and hope that we vote this down tonight. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, the question is, why change? That question's come up in another number of other communities. About 75% of towns and cities in the state of Massachusetts have changed from elected to appointed. Really, the issue is what's in the best interest, what's in the best long-term interest of the town. This position is an administrative position. It's not a policy position. It does not create its own rule set. It simply implements instructions. The rationale is we're in a very small community. You may not have sufficient talent or in the community. There's no real reason why we should bound looking for talent within simply the confines of the town when there may be a highly qualified person living across the line in Whately. You're looking for the best person to do the job, an administrative job. And it's not as though the Board of Selectmen don't have broad appointment authority. This is not something new. We appoint the police chief, we appoint the fire chief, we appoint the director of DPW, we appoint the town administrator, we appoint a whole range of boards and committees that serve the town. We've appointed recently an individual to serve as the acting treasurer, an elected position in the absence of the gentleman. We've appointed someone to fill in as the acting collector, another elected position because of a vacancy there. We will jointly work with the Planning Board and the Board of Health on vacancies that they currently have, provided they act timely, and if they don't, under law, the board has the authority to unilaterally make appointments to those otherwise elected positions. So appointing people is inherent in the chief executive of the town, and the Board of Selectmen represents that chief executive of the town. I think if you look objectively at it, the goal should be to staff our positions with the best person capable to do the job for the town. And that's all this is trying to do.
Any other discussion? Why don't you give somebody here a chance?
Michael Ponchik, 3 Prospect Street. Because it is town funding and it's not private business, I would certainly hate to see the opportunity to vote for someone for whatever position, Board of Health, town clerk, town treasurer. I think that, as has been stated very eloquently by Mr. Adamski, it is our right, and we should be able to vote this. And it's not just about hiring people, or which is what it is. It's not appointing, it's hiring. So thank you.
Carrie? I'll get you next.
The other point, I completely agree with the 3 that have spoken already. Keeping an elected position keeps it somebody from within our town. I don't know about anybody else, but I enjoy being able to go in the office and see the people that we've chosen by voting to put into office, no matter what position it is, and you go in there and you get to see a townsperson. You make an appointment, it doesn't guarantee that somebody from within town is going to be sitting in that office. And again, we go back to we're a small community, and I think we all enjoy what we have. And growing up here, truthfully, it doesn't make a difference what kind of education you have, because I know from personal experience from talking to multiple people that have held different spots in this town, they went into those positions by election, and they did an excellent job, and they started off with no prior experience to their positions. So it's a learning curve, and you learn through your position. I currently work as a dispatcher. I didn't have any experience, and my education didn't get me my job. But now I have 8 years experience, and the people who start underneath me come in with no experience, but it doesn't mean they don't deserve the position and don't deserve a chance.
Thank you.
Janet Warren, Linseed Road, and I just want to second what Mr. Boyle said. It was extremely logical, extremely simple. It's efficient. We just want to have the best person and have them do their job right. And the big thing is this is an administrative position. This person is not making the rules. They are just carrying out, they're just executing the rules that we all make. Thank you.
Go ahead, Larry.
If we follow the logic of just having positions that have rules, then I think that the treasurer, the clerk, and possibly even the selectmen should be appointed, because they all, especially the clerk and the treasurer, are bound by significant rules. So I think it's a weak argument to say that by virtue of it being merely administrative or technical job that we could appoint rather than elect. I'm for electing. I'd like to see more people elected, actually.
And Pat?
Ladies and gentlemen, if it ain't broke, why fix it? I move the question.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor of Article 3, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. Nay. Motion's opposed.
Moderator.
Mr. Leschko.
I move we take up Article 4.
Second. Second.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to take up Article 4 is in your handout.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Leschko.
I move that the town vote to amend the general bylaws of the town of Hatfield, Section 4.10, 410, by deleting between February 1st and May 1st of each year, or take any action relative thereto.
Motion's been read and seconded as in your handout. Is there any discussion?
Calling the DPW director to respond, please.
Janet Damsey, again, good end of town, North Hatfield. I just have one question. I think I know what you're talking about is Linseed Road area up in there. My question is, now, there are a lot of landowners up there with a lot of logging, or can be logged. Are they exempt? Can they be exempt, or what's the deal? Because a lot of people up there, again, own the land, they make the money off the logs, but if they can't get them out because of the weight of the trucks, it's not a good issue.
Yes. All we're doing here is changing the bylaw, which only covered a period, I think, with 1 February to 1 May, and removing that, because the damage can occur at any time of the year.
Right.
And there is, however, a provision in there. Anyone could come in for a specific waiver for their particular operation, and the Board of Selectmen can grant that. And as well, the bylaw, as it already exists, talks about certain exemptions like heating oil trucks, emergency response vehicles.
I understand
and
that,
others
but
like that.
now that I know some people were waiting till, well, I guess Phil would be able to help me there. Some people would have to wait till like after May 15th or May 1st, whatever it was. But now, if it's year-round, that's all I'm asking. I just want to know if these people that are up there, if they have to do some logging, whatever, obviously the equipment, the loaders coming in are overweight. Would they be allowed to do it?
Under the request for the special permit, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor of Article 4 signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Boyle.
I move we take up Article 5.
Motion's been made and seconded to take up Article 5 is in your handout.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Boyle.
I move the town vote to transfer from the Board of Health expense account $12,000 to the Board of Health salary account to hire a part-time health agent or to take any other action relative thereto.
You've heard the article as read. Is there any discussion?
Can I make one comment before?
Excuse me, he's just going to make a quick comment.
Just one comment. There is no change to the budget. All this is moving money from one account to another account.
I have a few questions on this. First of all, it says that somewhere that I read, there's an amount of $28 per hour that was offered to the health agent that was hired. And I also read some of the public documents that were that were available after the interviews. And I'm just wondering, the person that was hired of the 3 candidates seemed to have the least amount of experience as well as the least amount of credentialing. And I'm wondering, since it's a financial article, why this person will be offered this amount of money?
Okay, and we'll have, yeah. Gary's got your hand up, so come on up.
And I also have a motion that I would like to make on this article as well. So am I to relinquish floor now, or?
We'll finish the discussion and then just see if there's something shed light on it that might make you not want to do that, so.
Okay.
I've been up here a lot tonight, apparently, but Carrie Flaherty, Chairman of the Board of Health. To answer the first question, the $28 an hour, that has come out of the money that was in our expense line. It was based on an average of 8 to 10 hours a week for the health agent position. So we, as the board, prior to the passing of Corey, the three of us decided the hourly rate that would be given based off of the monies in the expense line, which was appropriated at town floor previously. As for a discussion on who we chose, that's not going to happen at town floor. This is an open meeting for Board of Health. It was our decision, our choice. The motion was made and seconded by our board members, and it was voted upon unanimously to select who we selected. Other than that, if anybody has questions, they can come to our board meeting and ask them there, but this isn't the place for it.
And Louise, you can come up in just a second.
I'm not asking about who was selected. I'm asking why the person that had the least amount of credentials and the least experience was selected. And I would also like to say that...
That's getting into their departmental situations, and those are things that you need to talk with them about.
That's fine. Then I would like to make a motion that we table this until spring town meeting so that it can be further developed, because I don't believe that the plan and the salary and the job position was fully developed before this happened. And so I would like to make that motion to table this until spring town meeting.
Okay. Does anybody second that? No, there's no second. Louise.
Louise Slish, 99 Elm Street. I really have a technical question. Is there just one line item in the budget for the Board of Health salary? In the current budget, there's a Board of Health salary. By law, that's the salary of the elected members of the Board of Health. So I think you have to create a line item for the Board of Health agent to transfer the money to. Because at this point, if you transfer this money to the Board of Health salary account, you're transferring it to an account to pay the elected members of the board, not the agent. Unless I'm wrong, and there's a second account there for salaries. There's just a salary and expense account, correct? There always was, so I'm assuming that's the case. So I think we probably need to just amend this to create a Board of Health. Okay.
Okay, and
We think there might have been a separate line item.
Okay.
Let us check the budget.
Okay, thank you.
And Carrie, 1 second. We'll have him come up, and you can come up. You can come up. You're chomping at the bit. That's cool.
I believe
That's
there was.
good.
I believe there was a salary aside of the Board of Health. I think there was $14,000 to be used, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm pretty sure it should be in our budget. I know we had. I know for a fact we had the budget for the 3 members, and then we had $14,000 set aside for them to look for somebody as a health agent.
But that was in the expense line because we were going to hire the person as a contractor.
Right.
But we
Right.
couldn't do that. So I don't
So
know.
can't we still do that?
We can't do that. That's why we're transferring the money.
All right.
Okay, so Carrie, why don't you explain something too?
Yeah, just so everybody understands, the monies originally were in our expense line for a contracted health agent. However, to be a contracted health agent, you have to have liability insurance, and the town has to bond you. There's all kinds of legal mumbo jumbo that has to happen. If we want to pay by the hour, she or he, whoever gets picked, at this point it's a she has to be put on the salary line to be paid as an employee of the town. So the money cannot come out of our expense line. It has to come out of a salary line because that's what it says has to happen. So because she's not a contracted employee, she has to be a town employee and get paid hourly, which she knows her hours will not exceed more than 10 hours a week. And based on the year, there's enough money in that money to be transferred for it to cover her whole yearly salary, if you would say.
For the $12,000.
For the 12,000, it was like 12,000 and some change, and it came out. That's how we figured out the hourly rate.
Okay, but this is for 12,000.
Right.
Even.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, 12,000. If that's what it is, we figured the hourly rate is based on the 12,000. And honestly, if you calculate out 8 hours a week at $28 an hour, it actually comes under 12,000.
Okay. Daryl, please.
So we're going to write up this is to Carrie and Louise's point, we'll write up an amendment to the article which will create a line for this person, and we'll take the money from the expense line and put it to this new line. I'm assuming we can do that.
You can propose an amendment, as long as you have a second on your group.
Second.
Very good. Yeah, he's writing it. Sure.
It's wonderful to see this move forward with the health agent and the whole scenario, the whole schematic of this. But I will remind the Finance Committee in the spring, when you're planning, that a lot of this hinged on adjusting the salary levels of the board members, which, as we've discussed at the last 4 town meetings that I've attended, were at the high end of the range based in the Commonwealth.
Okay, well, we're getting off of that at the moment. You have one more in the back.
Stan Pitchko, Prospect Street. This transfer from an expense account to a salary account, is this a one-time thing? And then when we come back in May, everything reverts back to what we voted for in last May? So this is just so this readjusts all those buckets and we create a new line?
The budget is new every year.
Okay.
Last year's budget has nothing
last
to
year,
do with
last
next
year's budget had X in the expense line, and then it had X amount in the salary line.
This is last year's budget.
Right, last year's budget, and now we're taking last year's budget and we're creating a new line.
Correct.
And we're transferring from an expense account into a salary account. And so when we go into the town meeting this May, we're gonna have those 3 lines?
The line will still be there because we'll create it.
Yes.
Right, so
But
then
whether
what we'll
there's-
have to do is we'll have to put more money back into the expense account, but now we have another salary line,
No.
and
No.
we
No.
have the.
No, going into the budget year, every line is 0. No matter how many lines there are, they start off at 0. and
I
then-
know we're not changing any of the numbers, we're just we're shifting things around. But I just want to know what's going to happen when we go into the next town meeting. We've created a whole nother line we have to consider.
If
Correct?
the Board of Health decided that they needed to increase their expense line at the next town meeting, they would make a proposal that would go through the Finance Committee and then would ultimately go through the town to make that change. At this point in time, the actual sum of money is not.
Oh, I know the sum of money doesn't change.
Change.
Right, you're just kind of.
We're just
You're
shuffling.
just cooking
them.
it around a little bit, and
That's right.
That's fine. So I just want to make sure that when we go back into May, are we going to have 3 lines, and are they all going to be fully funded with a full expense and another salary? And
We could have 3 lines or we could not. It just depends on how you put the budget together, really. I mean, because like was just said, the budget, every line is 0 until someone puts money into it.
Right.
So for years, actually, we've had lines in the budget that are unfunded. That's not uncommon. You often do that for things like that are not necessarily going to occur every year, but might occur again in the future. So instead of eliminating the line, you just 0 it out and we leave it there in case some future time someone wants to fund it. But it has to be voted on at town meeting every year.
All right, thank you.
Wow, so I could create a moderator expense line. And I have to apologize for the lack of lighting tonight when you came with daylight savings really close. We were all trying to find where the switch was for the timer, and Phil's going to have to figure that out tomorrow.
Hi, Ellen Bokina, 3 Prospect Street. I was on the Board of Health. In what forum would it be appropriate to look at who is hired and the liability perhaps surrounding that person if the credentials aren't met that were necessary to hold this position?
I would say it would have to be the Board of Health as the elected board. I mean, you could probably try to talk with the Select Board about it at other days, but I think the Board of Health, being elected by everyone, they're entrusted, as you know, they're entrusted to make those decisions. I'm just taking a good guess at that, but.
I'm just concerned because the way the wording was and what was looked for the position required a certain set of credentials, and to my understanding, this was not met. So how does this open up the time liability-wise in terms of inspections of different venues, whether it be restaurant or septic or
Right.
whatever?
That would be between the Board of Health and maybe the selectmen interacting with it. Certainly not on town floor, we're not going to.
Well, we're appropriating the money to use, you know, at this point, so,
We're appropriating the money for the Board of Health to operate in the best way they feel that they were charged with doing, and you can go to their meetings and appease to that, or maybe see if the select board wants to get involved in it.
okay. All right,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. How you doing over there, Sean? I think everybody's amendment careful tonight.
I have
Pat?
to rewrite the whole thing, Joe, I can't.
He's just got to move his, yeah. And a little thing for some of the people that are newer here, I learned many years ago when I first started as moderator, I had people say yes and no. And I quickly learned on the first vote what a mistake that was, because when you say aye and nay to the hearing for a majority vote, it sounds the same. When you say yes and no, a deep voice comes back as a no, and you believe there's more voices. So we stand back to our forefathers were pretty smart using a and nay.
Right?
Just an aside. Does he have that?
Fund that line by transferring $12,000 from the Board of Health expense account.
And you're going to read that, correct?
Yeah. You want me to read it?
You're going to read it first, for sure.
He's doing great.
Everybody's done a great job. I haven't heard one cell phone ring tonight.
All right. How about this? I move
Yes,
the town to-
I think
move the
so.
town vote to create
Yeah,
a
we never
salary
push
line
town
for the
meetings
Board of
past
Health
10.
and to fund that line by transferring $12,000 from the Board of Health expense account. Is that okay? Salary line for the Board of Health. Is that all right?
Put it on vibrate.
I move the town vote to transfer from the Board of Health. Okay. Line for the
Create
Board
a
of
health,
Health
it should be create
to
a
fund
health
that
agent
line
salary line.
create a health
Health agent salary line.
agent salary line for the Board of Health, and to fund that line by transferring $12,000 from the Board of Health expense account. That's close enough?
Yeah.
We can just get rid of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Right? Do you want me to read that?
Okay, so why don't you do the reading of
I
it?
think we're going to try to replace the whole thing.
Okay.
Oh, I need it. It's all right. I move the town vote to create a health agent salary line for the Board of Health and to fund that line by transferring $12,000 from the Board of Health expense account.
You want to make a motion to replace this with that? So it's
Yes.
gotta be part
Oh, so yeah, to replace, this is to replace the current motion.
Second.
of what he just
Now, do
said.
we have to vote this and then vote the other one down?
So now we have to leave.
Good. Well, he's making this motion.
No, it's easier to add it. Yeah.
This is the motion he just, yes, the article's on the floor.
Now he's making a motion.
Why does it take the former,
Right.
the former
So we got to vote this through, then the article.
or someone
Okay.
reread these things?
So this is on the amendment, and then we have to go back to the article. So the amendment is, I move the town vote to create a health agent salary line for the Board of Health and to fund this? To fund this what? To fund this by transferring $12,000 from the Board of Health expense account. Okay, all those in favor of this signify by saying aye. Any opposed, nay. The motion carries. Now we're back on the article, which,
So now, this is the article.
okay. All right, so now this is the, that's the way we've done it. Okay. So now we have to vote on the same thing one more time because now this is the article. So I move that the town vote to create a health agent salary line for the Board of Health and to fund the trust to fund this by transferring $12,000 from the Board of Health expense account. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. That passes.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. I hereby dissolve this meeting. Thank you for your patience. I hope we had a couple good chuckles tonight. Never lose your sense of humor.